report. Are there any that has to be added to the agenda? Anything else?
We'll need to add the appointment of a clerk pro temp.
Do I have that?
I don't think any of us have it. Brad's got it.
I've got it.
Okay, so we'll, where are you going to add that? Well,
Where do you want to add it?
Well, immediately, I would think, right? And then we'll move on.
You want to, well, then I'll move that we appoint Doreen Bowles clerk pro temp.
I'll second.
Tied for second, and without any other questions that I'm seeing, all in favor? That's everyone? Very good. Now, Doreen, you can take minutes.
Okay.
Now, officially, you're taking minutes and will be our board clerk pro temp until such point as you're not. But we'll. And anything else to the agenda? We added the personnel supplements, right? Okay, and that's been distributed. You've had a chance to look at it. So very good. And just before we get to the rest of the agenda, did sad news this weekend regarding Chuck Broadhead. Brad, you just
a great friend of the community, a friend of the district. Chuck Broadhead passed away. I'm going to ask for a moment of silence just to say he was one of the founders of IPEI. He used to volunteer at BJM and read to kids there. A long time active with Longview and its predecessor Ithaca, and I can't list all the different other community things he did. And of course you'll remember his wife Phyllis passed away a couple of years ago, a long-time librarian for the district for whom the Boynton Library is named. So if we could just maybe ask you to have a moment of silence in his memory.
thank you, Brad, and thank you, Chuck. Receiving, hearing delegations, anyone signed up, public staff? Susan, anything? Margaret, you want to speak? No, you're okay.
Oh, you got her.
Scared her.
Woke her up.
So it's not, it's not raining. The sun was out. I don't know what that. Anyone else? Very good. And I think on to. We're going to just keep going. Consent agenda. Yes.
Yeah. I'll move the consent agenda as presented along with the supplemental personnel report.
I'll second.
Thanks, Pat. Any questions? I'm not seeing a long list of change orders.
That's good.
This time, so that's good.
You guys didn't meet, did you?
It's the new way to control it.
We will be meeting later. Finance meeting, 22nd? 22nd. Always a very interesting meeting, finance and facilities combined. Get a lot of time. No other questions without further ado. All in favor? That's everyone. And on to Dr. Brown, Superintendent's report.
Thank you. And I'll be asking Mr. Granger to help me with Superintendent's report tonight after I say a couple of things. First, I wish to thank the board for your support and the opening of school. Your attendance at the convocation was important to me and so many of our staff members. When in the building this week, many of them mentioned how they enjoyed seeing you, many of you there on the front row, as we welcomed all staff members back the day before school opened. The highlight for me during that convocation was recognizing 25, 30 year, and 35 year back some folks who contributed so much to the organization, including Ms. Midler, who was recognized for 30 years.
I'm only 32, so.
30?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I started at 2.
Well, talk to my daughter.
Thank you.
So we recognized some staff for their key contributions to the organization, and then we also talked about the work that we're proud of over the last year and where we're going. And I felt a sense of excitement. I fed off the energy from the group, and I hope they saw that I was pretty excited about it also. So the convocation was great,
Was
which
good.
then sparked the first day of school, which we did go to school on the first day. And other highlights, I mean, there were so many highlights from the first day of school. Many of the administrators from the central team drove the bus, and I'm hoping we can have an agenda item going forward about just what happens from 6:30 in the morning until 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock every day. Because it was an eye-opener for me to ride a bus on the first day of school and to hear how that operation works with dozens of employees and so much capital on the roads and trying to find a bus stop and having a parent take pictures of a young person getting on the bus. That was an unintended consequence for me to be on the bus and have folks want me to come out and take pictures. I think I made some bus drivers late. So I apologize for taking so many pictures on the first day. So, and unfortunately we had to miss the second day, as you know, because of the severe flooding. And our hearts go out and thoughts go out to the folks who are struggling, still struggling with the flooding. But so we missed that second day, but we got back on track last Friday. And it's, from all accounts, a great opening to school. So again, thank you for your support. And we, as a staff, are very happy. And I can also add the fall sports are up and underway. I think there was a volleyball game today. Our first home football game will be on Friday night. I spoke to Mr. Ed Reverend today, the athletic director. He's very happy with not only the practices, but the game experiences of all of our fall sports teams. So I'll send out a schedule. If you don't already have one, so if you have an opportunity to stop by one of our outstanding events, please do so, because I've enjoyed it. It was my first time in the carry-on for the football game a few weeks ago. It didn't end up like we wanted it to, but the experience alone was something for young people. But again, a great start to the year. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Grant, who wants to speak a little bit about,
Sure. The Finance and Facilities Committee wanted to bring some information to you because in 2 weeks we're going to ask you to approve some additions to the bond facilities bond project. So we want to tell you where we are and where we've been and how it's worked out so far, and let you know what we intend to bring to you in 2 weeks. So here's a list of the substantially completed projects. Substantial, yeah, I like that word.
I like that.
I've been begging them to be done, gone, and in some instances they are, but not in all. I know, yeah, there's a few up there where they're still hanging around and there's one last thing to do and so forth, but we're trying to get them to move on and get out of all of those buildings. Next. The ones that are still under construction, Bell Sherman, they've been able to use the gym and the additional classroom and some meeting space in there, but as those folks who are at Bell Sherman are aware, some of the open space is still a storage and staging area for construction and so forth. So that's still to be completed, and some other things to be finished up there. So it's getting there. Health and wellness is the one project that's lagging well behind. We have suggested and asked our construction managers to be ready for use of the buildings by the beginning of the second semester. That's the current goal. They were suggesting something like the 5th of February. We've suggested 5th of February. We've been suggesting the 25th of January would be better. We'll see where it ends up, but we hope to be able to use those facilities for the second semester so that we can actually schedule some adaptive PE in the adaptive PE space, use the gym there, and of course get into the wellness facility itself. So the folks who at home who've been driving by and wondering why on earth we're building a freestanding gymnasium, we are not. It will be connected to the main building with a single-story building that isn't up yet. So no, we did not build a freestanding gym away from all the other buildings. So that is going to drag on. Though the parking lot drop-off, parent drop-off, bus loop are all built now. Where it says buses only, the sign means buses only, please. We need
train your car. to
Yeah,
go-
train your car, only
Go in the
go,
other way.
yeah, only go in the car lot. There is a drop-off,
A lot of space.
a lot of space for a drop-off from cars, but we need to have the buses separate. That was one of the safety features here, was to completely separate the auto traffic from the bus traffic there. So, where are we? Our original costs were estimated at $98,400,000. We currently think we're going to come in at $92,292 for a savings of $6,107,000. So we are under budget, reasonably under budget. Hopefully the projects that are wrapping up will come in within the estimated numbers. We've left enough in there, I think they should come in within those numbers. But that's just one of the costs. One of the other costs is, of course, interest. We originally, at the time this was voted on, tax exempt rates were running near to 5%, so we estimated 5%. As everyone's aware, interest rates have gone down, and we've actually, over the last few years, been able to borrow from between 1% and 3.6%. So we've had some savings, and I think we've got a slide to tell you what those savings added up to. We estimated through 6/30/2011, we'd spend $7.2 million. We actually spent $3.6 million. So for the taxpayers, let's see, our building aid is what, about 52%?
Right.
So split it roughly in half. The local taxpayers have saved about $1.8 million, and the state taxpayers have saved about $1.8 million, give or
That's
take,
nice.
on the interest costs. So we've been using, we've used not just the fact that rates have gone down, but we've been aggressive users of short-term borrowing, bond anticipation notes of just 12 months at a time, rolling some of that money over and taking advantage of rates at 1%. So we've been able to be substantially under where we were. Projected debt service as we go forward, as you see, we're at a peak, and as you look out a couple of years, it trends back down. And we call it projected because we've currently got 15 million borrowed short term. We're going to have to do one more borrowing to finish paying for the items that are under construction, and so we won't know the precise interest rate for a bit. So that's got an estimate of an interest rate in it going forward. So what are we going to come to you for in 2 weeks? We're going to propose that we do 2 more small projects out of the bond. You saw those $6.1 million in savings. I'm fascinated by the first one, Cuba Heights. Before I was on the board and was here listening to them talk about the facilities bond, they said, well, you know, you might want to do some other things when the bond's over, like the Cuba Heights roof. It was funny, 5 years ago, it was the item that was mentioned. It is in need of repair. We're replacement really. We're patching it pretty aggressively right now. And it leaks, even with the aggressive patching. So with that roof, I am told we won't have to hear about a roof for 10 years. We will have done everything in the district in the last 7 years or so. So I'm told that we won't have to hear about a roof for 10 years. I won't be on the board then, so you can blame somebody else, but we're hopeful that'll be the case. As part of our initiative to get more wireless access, we want to be able to move to district-wide wireless access throughout all our buildings so that everybody who wants to in the buildings can use it. They can use either our devices, they can bring their devices, be able to use wireless inside all the buildings. And I think, Dr. Brown, you're even thinking about projecting it onto the grounds, so forth. So if you want to be there on the weekend and want wireless access, you can be outside the buildings and get wireless access. We're estimating that to be up to $1 million. So in 2 weeks, to those of you, my brethren on the board, will be back to you to ask you, if you might consider approving those 2 projects. We would hope to see those both done next summer. Any questions?
Oh, sure. Just talk to me a little bit about the original scope of the referendum and how this fits in.
Sure. Fortunately, the referendum was drawn to say roofs as one of the items to be done, and so it didn't speak to a particular buildings on the referendum.
We did substantial work at Cuba Heights.
We did HVAC work, as we did at many of the buildings. Replaced the old boilers with much more efficient gas boilers now.
Do we do ceilings and lights? I mean,
Ceilings and lights at Cuba Heights, I don't believe so. I don't believe so. No, but we're leaking on them now, so
all right.
we'd like to get there. But no, some were, and there was some exterior work at Cuba Heights as well. You'll recall the concrete steps up front were deteriorating. I believe we paved the parking lot, expanded it. So there was some exterior and playgrounds and such. So there was
certainly
exterior work.
The interior was torn apart last summer.
For the HVAC work, right. And
Is that up on the roof? Any of it up?
No, actually, that one, that's actually in a utility room, and different than some of the other buildings.
And in the wireless access, we had, the NOCs, the closets, the
Well, that's why,
technology piece.
and that's interesting, yeah, the network operating. We actually have now the ability, because we upgraded the NOC, we actually have the ability to do this, to expand the wireless. As I understand, we'll be able to have, 30 devices in every classroom that be able to be on. We'll have that kind of bandwidth, so that if everybody in the classroom has a device, they'll be able to be on if they want.
So when I look at my capital project report, I mean, these will fit right into our spreadsheet,
Right.
of, the IT,
Well,
Cuba Heights, et cetera.
Yeah, we'll probably add 2 lines, because it'd
Be a separate.
be separate
Oops.
SED projects.
Go ahead, sir.
First, I just want to compliment Rob and Brad for the work they did to save us the majority of that $6 million and having the knowledge and background to play with the interest rates, and it was a huge thing, and year after year, you guys just kept pulling money and making us borrow more efficiently and get 1% or lower interest rates, and that was used. And without your expertise, I know it wouldn't have come from me. And so it was great to have you guys do that for us. But my question is, on the proposed projects, was there a process in place that we kind of looked at everything and selected these, or do you want us to come back with our own thoughts or ideas, or should there be a process where we kind of canvass the whole district and say these two are the most important right now with all our priorities and goals and things we're trying to do as far as making this smart building? I mean, is there something in Danby that is falling apart? Is there some other building have we gone through a thorough check to see?
Sure. No, it's a good question. And we did ask Dr. Brown and our facilities folks back in June, and we gave them till August to say at our August meeting, what might you do if we were to be willing to use some of the savings? What would you suggest? The one roof was a no-brainer. That one seems to be the one facilities item that we really need to do. It was not in the original list of items, and seems to be the one thing we really need to do there. On the district-wide wireless, I will tell you that that's certainly completely discretionary. I mean, we don't have to, but we think given where we're headed, where I read, you read the stuff from the statewide, everybody's moving in this direction with a lot more wireless. We've got a lot of students who come to school with their devices, as well as we're trying to beef up the number of devices we have, and we just don't have the access for them. So we need to move in that direction. And this gives us the chance really to kind of leapfrog some other folks and be 100% access throughout our buildings. But I will tell you, it is discretionary in that regard. I mean, we don't have to have it.
And I would add, some things aren't here. I mean, there was some negotiation during the committee meeting. There were two other options as far as technology alone that were on the table. One was adding security access for all our buildings, which was a significant price tag, but there was a team of folks who came in and said that was something we may want to look at. Security access, and then the interactive whiteboards to not only beef up our classrooms with regards to wireless infrastructure, but also devices like these outfitted in every classroom along with the electrical outlets.
Right.
So we decided that would be something we could wait on or look at other options to do, but this wireless one is something that we see as essential moving forward.
Those had pretty big price tags. I mean, I don't want to minimize $1 million. It's a pretty big price tag too, but the others dwarfed this. To go to security and camera security and so forth in 13 buildings was quite an expense. It was pretty large. And of course, I wanted to know who the hell was looking at the images. We needed somebody to look at the images. So you got that expense that would be part of it as well. So we didn't go in that direction. And the whiteboards, we had quite a bit of discussion about those. There are those educators who think we may already be moving past those. And so we didn't jump on that because again it was expensive. So we did look at, certainly on the tech side, more things. On facilities, just structures, this was the big item.
The one question is, I know we've kind of even been thinking about expanding our course offerings, and I know this ties into the wireless kind of better school outside of the school, and I didn't know if there were things that we needed on the infrastructure side to make that happen as far as the space to house things. I just wanted to make sure that we kind of made sure that if we had this opportunity that we kind of looked at everything carefully.
And we did, in the last meeting, we talked about the software upgrades as far as the information management systems, and we talked about some of the tools that we're entering into leases to get. So the package approach will allow us to not only do the internal offering, but the virtual offerings also.
And just to touch back on, you mentioned Danby, just a building that was outside the scope of the original referendum. That's, you really can't even look at that.
Well, we did repave part of the lot so that it was safe for people to walk in and out.
Right, but anything that was really beyond a different footprint or really adding significantly to really the what we went to the voters with, that's not going to fly, and we would not be able to do that. We suddenly decided that we're going to put $5 million into Marcos Flats and thought that's a good idea. We couldn't do it, so we'd have to go back to SED and say, okay, we changed our minds. We're going to sink a lot of money into a building that we may not want to sink money into. That was just an example, and then it ran. But
how long
go
will
ahead.
Danby be able to be open?
I can't answer that question.
Well, it's falling, it's damp, it's...
I mean, I'm no expert. As I understand it, the way the structure sits on the foundation, it's actually sliding slowly. And I'm sure I've not done it justice, but it's...
returning to the earth from whence it came.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, Judy, to bring that...
Oh, I don't want to bring it back.
Yeah, to bring that building back to a standard that would allow us to have children in there again would be quite an undertaking.
Yeah. It'd be cheaper probably to build a new school.
Yeah, I would guess that's what we would be advised. So at this point, Danby, we're just keeping it, we're keeping it safe. We've got a number of employees housed there, but we don't have any children storage there. And we got storage.
And certainly the priority is to get finished and complete with all the projects and all 13 buildings. Is it 13?
Yeah.
How is the floor at the LACS going?
It's about complete.
I saw it today. It looks good. The second coat has been put on.
Oh, good. And we didn't have any flood this last time?
No, Paul and his staff were up there to make sure we didn't have a problem.
Right, I drove by Wednesday night. Ernie was up digging out drainage, sluiceways up at LACS. Sandbags were put up at LACS to try to ensure until a permanent solution
We've
is found.
approved, well, we've all approved a change order
Yeah.
to do some additional drainage work there. We're going to be diverting the water much further away from the building.
And, as long as we have 50-year floods every couple of months or so, I think we're going to need to put something
Yeah,
in.
we are too. Yeah.
Put something, well, last spring,
So far.
now, come on.
So when are they going to be able to use the floor in LACS?
Hoping the next few weeks.
Oh, yeah, it should be ready.
But it's a few weeks, it's got to still go?
Yeah, it's got a queue.
A lot of PE is outside right now, so they're adapting, and certainly we always want the buildings ready to go. But certainly the point was that Wednesday with all the rain, Paul, Margaret, all the guys, not only the guys, but all the personnel on maintenance and grounds, they were, I'm sure most of them were up all night long, trying to make sure that we did not have any flooding, in any of our low-lying buildings. And LACS is not a low-lying building, but the water can run right through anyway. So in many of our buildings, it was critical that staff was there to ensure that a drain wasn't backed up with debris, which happens right out
It was the
here.
classic planning.
Yeah.
We put 2 new catch basins in on the other end of the parking lot.
Yeah.
So, thanks to the staff, they did a great job, and, we were able to escape with no damage this time. And as Dr. Brown said, really, if you know UE at all, if you know their football, Tice Cobb Stadium, the baseball field, under at least, in their field house, under 15 to 20 feet of water, and really just pretty devastating. Owego, just starting to dry out. So some schools aren't even up and running yet. So we fortunately just had one day where we had to let the things settle down. So we as always are very fortunate. So anything that we can do to help, Dr. Brown, you've been in contact with other superintendents and folks down south. And they've got a lot of work to do to get kids back in school. So
We got some challenges.
that's exactly. Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back with the proposals in 2 weeks.
And certainly, Finance is meeting on the 22nd, Finance/Facilities. Brad, you're going to look at these
We're
again.
going to look at these again.
So 5 o'clock, feel free, anyone that wants to take a long, hard look, that's a good opportunity. More stuff, Dr. Brown?
Sure.
Or you're done with the superintendent's report? So we're on to strategic planning update.
Sure, now invite Dr. Myers. We've been talking about strategic planning for months now. And we've engaged stakeholders, stakeholder groups. We've had several conversations with the board. Dr. Myers and I spent a week in Atlanta getting trained to be certified internal facilitators for strategic planning. So we've talked about this much. And tonight we're coming to you with a recommendation to move forward, and we wish to get some feedback. Tonight is a work session around strategic planning. And what we're saying now, a continuous improvement process. One of the things I've learned very quickly is that word strategic planning has generated some emotional reaction for many folks in this community for many reasons, and I've learned. I had the opportunity to reread Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People last week, and this quote continues to resonate with me. He quotes Albert Einstein quite a bit in this book when he talks about personal improvements, organizational improvements, professional improvements. And he said, speaks to the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were when we created them. And when thinking about the challenges that we're facing now as an organization around finances, around teaching and learning, all the challenges that we're facing right now, in many ways, we created them as educators. At a certain level of thinking. And think about how we are going to shift and solve some of those problems and face some of those challenges, we need to be thinking differently, which then leads us to the strategic planning process. One of the quotes I've heard from many folks over the last few months is, we've done that before. Strategic planning got us to where we are now. Or how can you speak to us about aspirations and use the same process we used 10 years ago? Or the same, and then, the experts that we've had an opportunity to be with this summer, who've done 15,000 plus strategic plans, their comment to me around only about 5 or 10% of them actually were successful. Led me to think that, maybe it's an opportunity for us to rethink strategic planning or continuous improvement processes. So I'm thinking tonight, we were hoping to get away from this notion of strategic planning first and look at continuous improvement and put a process that will have some tenets from strategic planning that have been tried and true, but some things that we think are going to help us. Because as we said, the things that we're attempting to do are unprecedented in many regards, and some of the things that we're attempting to do are going to be very innovative. So to use a process that's been used over 20,000 plus times in organizations across the country may not be the right thing for us now. And plus, we think our community is asking for something different as far as our continuous improvement process. So Dr. Myers is going to lead us through a couple of slides that just sort of outline where we are right now with our thinking, and we wish to get some feedback from you.
And it really is only a couple of slides times 3, so there's 6 slides for you all tonight. If you've been watching television at all, Jennifer Hudson, who's an R&B singer, she's lost a lot of weight. She's tiny, but she sings, and I'm not going to sing it because I'm a tenor. She's an alto soprano, but she says, "It's a new dawn, it's a new day, and I'm feeling good." So we're moving forward in a new direction based on feedback and conversations that we've had with you, interactions we've had with you as the Board of Education, and varied stakeholders relative to the strategic visioning process and quote. So as Dr. Brown mentioned, we're moving forward with a continuous improvement process because as an educational institution, we cannot afford not to move in that direction, given the accountability status that we have for all educators across the district, given the requirements that are expected of all of our students who graduate from either Ithaca High School or LACS, we have to continually look at our practices. So we have really 3 very simple goals as it relates to strategic visioning, and we are, let's go with the continual improvement process, so I'll substitute that for strategic visioning, but we want to come up with this improvement process with benchmarks, because that's part of the issue around the Board of Education priorities. We haven't really benchmarked to say, okay, we've realized culture, or we have been successful as it relates to the use of data. So we want to look at that first and foremost as an outcome or a goal. We also want to realize the Board of Education priorities. We have 5. And I think more times than not, people certainly know the equity one, the elimination of race, class, gender, and disability as predictors of success, co-curricular participation, and discipline. But we have culture, we have data, we have resources, and we have communication. And I don't think really that all of our community members are aware fully of what exactly that means, both internally and externally. So we have some work to do. And then we want to engage a broad range of stakeholders. We get lots of feedback. Dr. Brown gets it when he's at Wegmans, when he's representing the district either at night during the week or on the weekends, that there's still a feeling that we have not engaged all of the stakeholder groups that exist in our district. And we heard very clearly and very definitively from you a little over a month ago that there are certain affinity groups or populations that don't feel like their voice counts or that we're not soliciting feedback from them. I too rode the bus on the first day of school, and what was really apparent to me, over half of the students that were supposed to be on the bus on the first day were not, because they didn't realize it was the first day of school. We had families coming out saying, we just found out that it was school today because other kids were coming out to school. So we have to do a better job of figuring out how to engage a population that might not have internet access, which many people do, and that's not a barrier, but we do have some. We have some that it's a language barrier, whether it's English is not their first language or they're not literate in English. And so we just have to devise and figure out how we can engage individuals in our community that we have not been able to reach in the past. So over the past 9 months, Dr. Brown has been speaking very uniformly and very consistently about these hedgehog concepts that come from good to great. And we have the teaching and learning framework, and Miss Evelyn, curriculum and instruction assistant superintendent, really did a nice job with her team to outline these 3 concepts: teaching and learning framework, habits of mind, expectations that we have consistently, really from pre-K all the way through graduation, for what we want our students to know and be able to do, not subject related specific, but across the continuum, across all subject areas and content areas. We've been focusing very much so on professional learning communities, about sustained staff development within schools and with affinity groups, having conversations about the data and really how to move forward achievement in very meaningful ways. And then human capital, that really just has been a very appropriate hedgehog concept with the APPR, the way that we evaluate teachers, observe and evaluate teachers and other educators in the district. The landscape and the rules of engagement have changed. So the human capital, how we work with the individuals and we recruit and retain, has been really critically important. So those 3 concepts Dr. Brown has, again, consistently and uniformly spoken in varied venues. I don't know if you're up to like 185 appearances at this point or what. Then we have our Board of Education priorities, and you know them very well: culture, equity, communication, resources, and data. So the goal with this process is really to, through a variety of venues, help to connect those 2 so that they're more seamless and that people very definitively understand how all of those concepts connect. And we want individuals, whether they're parents or caregivers, if they're students, if they're employees in the different groups within our organization, we want them to be able to make meaning of all of this information. So where do we go? What is it that we are looking to do as far as outcomes if we're successful in this process? We want to have alignment, clarity, coherence between the vision that Dr. Brown has outlined very consistently and the Board of Education priorities. So we want to have some seamless integration of those 2 areas. But we want to do that in a way where we have internal and external stakeholders aware of what those things are. So we really have not had an opportunity to solicit feedback, to get input from the various stakeholder groups around Dr. Brown's vision that he's outlined and the Board of Education priorities. I mean, we've done that a little bit, people are aware of it, but we have not engaged the community fully about, what are you thinking about that? How does that relate to you in your respective place? Just reiterating a point I made, community engagement. That's really critical for us, especially now given all of the requirements that we have as a district. We have to engage the community. And we've made a shift. We've made a shift as the Ithaca City School District, and districts across the state and country have made a shift that it's not about community involvement, but it really is about engaging the community. And so what does that involve? The next point of obtaining support and buy-in. So in order to have support and buy-in, they have to know what they're buying into. So that involves educating, informing, and then having a 2-way conversation. And that point is incredibly critical because, again, the groups that have traditionally not been represented in the conversations, who've not sat at the table, from whom we've not solicited feedback, we have to do a better job. And I think my bus ride is a case in point, that we're just not meeting with success or getting information out to all of the families and the students that we serve in our district. And then when everything's said and done, we're gauging success of the district because we know that we have such variety, such diversity, such uniqueness that we want to be able to say that we are touching the different affinity groups and that we truly have a reflective representation of our stakeholder groups in our community. So you all also asked us at the August board meeting this summer, okay, what's the timeline, Dr. Brown? What's the timeline, Dr. Myers? And I really have to thank Ms. Evelyn. We have really been trying to commit to health and wellness, so we walked today before exec session, and we were trying to think of, okay, what makes the best sense, as far as we had phase 1, 2, 3, 4. And that really, we want to, as we're moving forward in this process, we want to have catchy yet meaningful captions for the work that we're doing. So exploration, development, implementation, and evaluation, and you'll see the months that are associated with that time. And so during the exploration phase, we are interacting with the Board of Education, we're interacting with the community, we're informing and educating about the concept of having priorities and having the vision aligned, and again, making those meaningful touch points for individuals. So that we also are having conversations. Don't forget, we have our interns from Cornell University. Remember, they're free 99. They're not costing us anything. So I've been working with them. I actually met with them for a little over an hour on the flood day. We had a really good conversation, and they are especially interested and want to work on reaching the families that typically we haven't been able to reach. So they're thinking about the language barrier, they're thinking about literacy, and they said, Dr. Myers, we're going to go back to Cornell and we're going to have conversations with folks in this school and this department. And so they're really excited about working on this endeavor, and we have them from last year, but from now until the end of the school year to help us with this. And they, if you remember, they have quite impressive backgrounds. During the development phase, we are going to be working very closely with the internal and the external stakeholder groups. That's where, if you remember earlier, I talked about the concept of town hall meetings, of rethinking that and retooling and figuring out how we can get into the mountains and the valleys and talk to the varied constituents. So we'll be soliciting feedback. And this might not be comfortable for some of you, but this really is a very organic process. If we prescribed everything, I think very viscerally we would feel the reaction, oh, here they go again, being very top down, not interested in what we have to say. So, we will have organization to this, most definitely, but it will also be very organic. And again, as you shared with us, you wanted regular updates. We'll be updating you either in presentations like this, not very long, or sending you information through the board packet so you're aware of where we are. So we'll be dipsticking and informing you of of our process. Then we'll begin to implement the process in the beginning of 2012, and that's going to be a really exciting time. We're trying to do something that we have not accomplished in this way, and where we haven't been successful. And I really appreciate the quote that Dr. Brown put up about just ways of doing things differently and thinking outside the box. And then the final piece of this is the evaluation. Now remember, we're going to be evaluating all the way along. Evaluation is just not going to pop up towards the end of this process. And Connie actually shared with me just a few minutes. She said, Leslie, I even found, I think, something that's better. And I actually like this, sustained practice. So we don't want this just to occur during the rest of the 2011 year and then 2012, and then it's for naught or we're all done. So we want to maintain this momentum. We want to sustain the practice of this continual improvement process. Pardon me?
2012.
Right.
Typo.
Yes.
I'll put on that one.
That's okay. Just make a new mistake. I think that's the first time you've had a. So, just to give you just a few examples of what we're looking at, I spoke a little bit about that. I think the most critical shift for us is the implementation of benchmarks. And this is going to be really important for us because the benchmarks are going to be created and developed not just by district educators, by those who are working in the Ithaca City School District. We really need to have the different perspectives to help us develop those benchmarks. And again, that's going to help tell us, are we moving forward in a really good way towards culture or whatever the particular priority aligned with the hedgehog concepts? Building on success, this was an interesting concept that we picked up from a local community member that was working with us. And he said, you know, there are individuals from across the across different affinity groups that have experienced success with the Ithaca City School District. Why not begin to capitalize on and have conversations of when you were a student or involved with the Ithaca City School District, success was defined in what particular way, and then figure out how we can recreate that. Again, not cookie cutter, but just trying to begin to figure out what does it mean to be successful if you're a member of the Ithaca City School District community. Outreach and community building I spoke about, and then action plans. And I want to be really clear here, this does not eliminate the fact that we have this equity report card and that we have the equity action plans, because I know that that was a little bit of concern of all the work that had been involved and all of the community input around there. But we don't have concerted action plans really involving any of the other priorities other than very specifically the equity priorities. So really developing those action plans so we can look at, again, what does it mean to effectively use those resources in the Ithaca City School District, and how are we benchmarking it? And I think what's really impressive, we're going to be talking about this with our administrators next week at our admin team meeting, departments and groups within the Ithaca City School District, beyond schools, beyond inclusive education, special education, or AIS, academic intervention services, transportation, food service, and others have begun to come up with benchmarks of what would it mean to be successful in their areas. And so I think that's going to be a nice change. So we can begin to funnel that information as we're moving forward. And so, you know, just as I conclude, I think it's just really exciting that we can shift in this way. We're not backing away from strategic planning per se. There are still elements that are involved, but I think in a very meaningful and a very purposeful way, we really are trying to ensure that we have better alignment with the main areas of the district.
Questions?
I was either that good or that bad.
Just also connect to that other term, balanced scorecard.
Yes.
We talk about benchmarking and key performance indicators, metrics, how we want to define that. We can monitor where we are related to each one of our priorities. And in a balanced scorecard format, whether we look at it annually or whether we look at it quarterly, we'll be able to know our successes or failures or progress needed as far as where we are.
Go ahead, Jane.
When you talked about the town meetings, when are you going to formulate where they are and give us sort of some background and who's going to be there and who's going to present and hear and listen?
I appreciate you bringing that question up. When I met with the gentleman from Cornell, Jeremy and Jeffrey, they are actually doing an analysis for me of the different affinity groups that exist in the Ithaca City School District. So they're going to, and they didn't explain to me how, and I think if they try to, I might say, okay, you know what, thanks, but thanks. But they're going to look at all of the different demographic groups, and they're going to figure out how many meetings or how many groups of people we would need to target to hit the different affinity groups that are represented. So I can't answer that question right now. That's a work in progress, but we are looking at that to figure out how we can make sure that we're hitting the different populations.
How are we going to get the people that missed the bus on Wednesday?
I can't specifically answer that right now, but I actually am meeting with Jim Ellis either what's today, Tuesday, Thursday, because he wants to debrief my experience on the bus, and I want to talk to him a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Communication, one of our
Yeah.
priorities is communication.
Communication.
We know we have much work to do
Yeah.
when it comes to that work. And we
Because
have
we
it.
want those people to come.
Absolutely.
We're gonna figure it out.
Absolutely.
We solicited support from our external vendors to help us with communication, so
Right.
we're working hard at a key goal for the board around communication, so that we won't have half of our kids not come to school on the first day.
Yeah.
because
Let
we didn't know.
me just be clear about, this was a smaller bus, so we're not talking about like 50 kids total and 25 didn't come, so I want to make sure that that's clear.
What else? Go ahead, sir.
I'm probably the slowest or I think like this, the least out of everyone on the board probably. And I got some of what you were saying, but the integration of the three
Hedgehog concepts.
yeah, that Dr. Brown's always talking about, and our goals, they've never been kind of merged. Does this mean as a board we need to recraft these things? And you know, if we're really talking about a partnership, I mean, these were written, you know, at least 6, 7 or more years ago. I don't know that trying to fit them together makes sense. You know, we may need to, you know, if our leadership's going this way, we may need to figure out whether we need to tweak our goals. Is that part of this plan, or is there, you know, do we need to talk about that, Rob, or see, you know, have that conversation with the superintendent and figure out what, because they were made totally independent. He came in with his ideas and we had our goals, and does it make sense to try and marry them if they were totally, you know, different things? And so maybe that's a conversation.
We talked about this a bit before when we discussed whether we're going to go ahead and have that meeting, that board development meeting, when we revisit the priorities/goals, or are they goals or priorities, or which one's which, and you know, and reviewing all those. And it was my understanding that through this process, we're going to refine our goals.
So there will be some tweaking.
And priorities as we go through this process. We're going to get to that point where our goals and priorities are going to be wedded to our the concepts that
we've been talking.
You've been talking about a lot.
Yeah. There may be some tweaking, but if you look at our priorities, they're so.
Go ahead. Talk about. No. Judy Maxwell was trying to get me to say hedgehog, and I was trying not to say that word. So go ahead.
Self is trying. I forget. I'm off the.
I see Judy Maxwell. Go ahead.
There will be some tweaking that will happen, I'm sure, with the wording. But they're so broad right now. One of the things we learned when in Atlanta, we had an expert look at our current priorities, and they are pretty good priorities from his perspective. And we may need to add a word or two here, but I mean, when we talk about communications, that's something that most districts are going after. They may have an extra word or two associated with the word communications. Data, what is data driven, or is it data informed? Maybe we can be more clear about what does that mean around data. The equity goal, some folks are calling it an achievement gap, we're calling it an equity goal. And it's fairly tight, so I think what we have right now is pretty good, but going through this process will help everyone have a better understanding of the priorities, and which may result in some different language or a word or two. And quite frankly, some different hedgehog content. Not different, I'm hoping, but maybe some word changes. I mean, we went from a curriculum framework to a teaching and learning framework because of some of the feedback we received. Because it's more about teaching and learning for everyone in the organization versus the folks who are just in front of kids in the classroom. So that language may be tweaked. Some professional learning community. That's an educational term. A guy who's making a lot of money going around selling books with professional learning communities on it. And we want to call it something else going forward. So yeah, I think on both sides of that equation, but the key is a deep understanding of what we're going after and aspiration.
So, Dr. Myers, you had one slide up there that said, the only thing I got from it was board the board will get a report as these things progress. Is that our role in this? Or what are we doing with this thing of improvement, continue, whatever it's called? What are we doing? What's our, besides getting reports like, what are we supposed to do?
Well, just as, I'm sorry, were you done with your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Just as you gave us that feedback in August around, we'd like to, we changed our direction based on the feedback. So it's not just saying, okay, Board of Education members and I, here's where we are, hopefully you like it. This is a chance for you to interact with us as well on the executive team to say, I need some clarity here, this isn't quite making sense, or have you thought about that? So it's not a one-way communication where we just send something home and we've checked, that we've completed that, check that off our list. We'll be dialoguing with you and getting feedback because you are a constituent and you represent very constituents. So your feedback is going to be critical to our success.
And I would add, at the earlier meeting, we mentioned the board not being involved in those community meetings, maybe, to let the process go. Now I see the board members involved with those, all those community meetings, and all those action plans, because we're breaking down some norms when it comes to strategic planning, which in some ways excluded the board until approval time. Now it's more of a community engagement process where you're a part of it.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Heath?
Yeah, so you'll come back and we'll have a dialogue, and how will it, if we have thoughts about something and they're not good thoughts.
I'm a New York State school counselor.
Well, because if we may want to go down the wrong road, I mean, will there be, the opposite side of that argument presented by the district, or how, is it? That's what I'm not, like, just because we say yes, no, we may not have a basis of knowledge, or maybe just wrong about something. Will there be opportunities to develop those errors or those mistakes or those things that? I'm just not. Yeah, I guess.
Absolutely, because then if we don't, I call it like the believer and doubter process. You have some people that are going to be so excited, woo, we love this, and other people like, not so much, not feeling this, or I have a counter thought to this or a counter proposal. That's why, as Dr. Brown said, your involvement in whatever we term them, town hall, community meetings, you'll have a voice there. I have relationships with all of you. You can have conversations with me about, I don't quite get what happened, in October when you were doing that didn't feel right to me, or I didn't get it. And then also the conversations that we have here at the board level. So there will be plenty of opportunities for you to express concern, hopefully some appreciation, some endorsement, etc.
I think we've seen some, on both parts of listening to us, especially of the board development time and the other time when everybody been there, done that, and the change reflects the listening part and trying to include us more, which we wanted this summer. And
Do you know what I'm concerned about? I'm less concerned about the people at that table listening to us. I was more wondering what role did our listening to them take? How are we going to grow? How are we going to improve? And that's kind of, I wondered, when do we become developed, as we joke, that, and educated to understand some of the work that's trying to be done at a higher level. And that's why I wondered what in place here allowed us to grow with the district and the teachers and the staff.
And I believe that's happening. We had Judy using the word hedgehog concept. A few weeks ago, we were talking about a district-wide wireless project. A few weeks ago, we talked about leases and software. We've had many of you at our PLC days and our PLC opportunities with educators. It's happening. I think we're learning together through this process. And when we start talking about benchmarking, I think we're all going to be going into a place none of us have been. If we do this right, aspirations are going to be things like every child in our district being fluent in a second language by the time they graduate from high school. Let's have that conversation in our community meetings and then at this level. And if that's something we're serious about, then that will be a benchmark. And that's something we'll monitor over the next year or two. So I think we're going to learn together, continue to learn together, because you've informed my thinking, and I'm hoping that we've informed, well, I can see you've informed some viewers already. It's just messy work. And we said it was going to be messy and ambiguous, and it is going to be real.
Well, I'll go back to a comment Judy had, but my greatest concern is engaging the community.
Yeah.
And, I have nothing against Cornell MBAs, and, I just, a little feedback, when I hear I've got Cornell MBAs, two young men that, really don't know this community very well, they're going to do a study of affinity groups, I'm still going to think that Caroline, Enfield, and Wilseyville probably aren't on their radar screen. And, how am I going to, so again, how am I going to engage the folks in this community? Maybe those folks that didn't really know school was starting this week, and plus a wide range geographically that we serve. How are we going to get them involved? And so that's, to me, the greatest challenge.
And we're going to partner with some of our key stakeholders. We're meeting with the EIOC tomorrow morning to talk about this process. They've already spoken to some of the affinity groups that we may be missing. So it wasn't going to just be Cornell determining the groups. We're going to get feedback from many others.
Well, I think, there are some of us who have lived, I lived in Caroline for a while when I first came. So I know some of the areas in Caroline. You certainly know some of the areas in Enfield, and I have friends who live in Danby and that area. I think, we have concentrated a lot, and we should have, on the downtown. We now need to equally do it around. And we're missing quite a few.
That's always been the challenge in the district, to try to bring all the folks together. Not that I have anything against Cornell MBAs, just because I don't have one. Go ahead.
So when the Cornell MBAs reach out to them, what kind of questions, what does that dialogue look like?
Well, remember, they're just putting together the process.
Okay.
So they're not necessarily going into the field, even though they said they wanted to, which, I mean, but then, see, we have an inherent bias there too, though, that if that you can't, if you come from a certain level, that you can't interact with a variety of folks. I think that's a great opportunity. I mean, we could dialogue and debate about that. But we're going to have turnkey efforts, because we also have to have individuals who are known in these communities, who are trusted. Because in some instances, even if the folks look like me, if I'm not known in that particular community, I can, be as welcoming and well-intended as I possibly can be, but I might not be well received. So we're going to have, that's why this is truly a community engagement process, because we're going to have to get community elders, griots, wise people who can go in and who are respected and known in our very communities. And I think that's where it is a little bit different.
How are we going to know who these elders and trusted people are?
We're working on it, Judy. We're getting there. We're getting there. Again, this is going beyond, and I love these questions, because this is beyond what we've done before. Because I know, and I feel the doubt, but I have this concern. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. So we're going to have to do it in chunks. And that's the one thing I'm just going to ask from all of you is Board of Education patience, right?
Oh, okay.
Because we haven't completely been successful before, so we're boldly going where we haven't gone before. So this is new territory for us. So I don't want you to think that I'm being evasive. I don't know all the time. We're going to be working on that.
We're going to have some successes through this process. We're going to make some mistakes, but the mistakes we're going to make are going to be new mistakes. It won't be tried and old mistakes. We're going to make some new mistakes, but we're going to have, I think we've already achieved some successes. We have people throughout our community speaking to catch-all concepts and board priorities that have never spoken about those before. And believe me, I know, because they're coming up to us in the grocery stores, on the playground. So and now, not only are they saying the things like catch-all concept or teaching and learning framework, they're going to know what they mean and what it looks like when we've achieved world-class status with them, if we do this well.
And I think we're going to thank Leslie Myers for a very good half hour. And go on to policies, where there's policies on the agenda again. And who's responsible?
John, and he couldn't be here. And
I see first reading of various policies. Can someone, Pat, aren't you on that committee?
I am on that committee.
Pat, take over.
Yeah, feel free to
It's my time to shine.
use those talents to good use.
Well,
Move it,
last month,
move it
our,
first and discuss it.
Sure, you're
Wait,
from the policy
I
committee. so-
move, what are we moving, consideration?
The first reading.
I move the first reading of these four, of
One at a
policy
time.
1120. Thank you.
Second.
Which one is it? 1120?
11:20.
District records, we have,
I need to speak to it.
No, you can speak.
could I say one general thing about why we're looking at all these policies to put it in context?
No, you can, sure. go ahead.
Okay, well, state rules, laws mandate that we have policies covering all of these issues, and when our district clerk looked through our policies and procedures, she could not find that we had a policy on any of these issues. So there are about 8 or 9 policies missing. We considered half of them at the last policy committee meeting. We will consider the other half at the next policy committee meeting. And all of these are basically state boilerplate that we have adopted because we need policies on them. And they are mostly, we haven't really changed any wording from the way these policies are written for most districts. So the first policy is school district records. It's a retention and destruction of records, and this really isn't something that we can negotiate a lot. It's required by law. This is the minimum required by law.
Have our attorneys taken a look at this policy? Yes.
No. And not that I know of, unless Sean said it.
Necessary?
I would think so.
Yeah, I believe they have it.
Right, I just wondered which
No.
version this was. Okay.
This-
It's the first reading, so.
Yeah.
First reading,
Okay.
so,
Well, we got, this one definitely, because there's talk, you got,
Well, sure, there's reference and
what is it, you know, the
educational level.
Yeah.
yeah, that you have to, what you turn over and when, and access.
All right.
This is legal.
And.
Might be perfect, but.
Right.
So who's going to get it to them?
Well, we'll just verify where we are in the process. This is the basic outline and language that's been recommended by, well, there's school board associations that are, okay. They're legal people, so we'll have our people look at it. And we, of course, read them all, and we will be offering edits as well. And Brad, remind me, we moved to table, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we should table.
Yep, just table. We've had the first reading, table,
I move that we take.
postpone, table, either way.
All right, so we will,
So, I think we got a vote to table it, don't we?
Yeah.
yeah,
And Seth just made the motion.
was there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor? That's everyone. On to the next. Keep going, Pat.
okay, remind me, I'm
We're at
moving.
the flag.
Am I?
The other one you want.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, display.
Bring it up and move it.
Okay,
If you would.
I'm sorry, I was doing them in numerical order, I'll do them in the order they are.
On the agenda would be great.
Yes, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm moving discussion of this policy 4311.1, display of the flag.
I'll second.
Second by Brad. Go ahead and speak to it again, Pat. Similar?
It's exactly the same. There's a policy and then the regulations governing it. This is a pretty standard policy that is used by most districts, recommended by NISMA.
Okay.
This was one I had concern about. I'm on the policy committee, and I am not certain that we follow this exactly. It's the way it's written. I mean, we never had a policy, so I'm not, so I don't know
Apparently
if we
not.
follow it. No.
Which part do you think we don't
Well,
follow?
was it the half-mast on Pearl Harbor? Was it Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah.
And days commemorating the death of a personage of great importance,
Or-
and on days designated by the president or the governor.
Well,
And the
they're supposed to
board
do that.
Flag will never be up.
And I read it without
And, Pearl Harbor.
reading.
And I was touched to find out commemorating the death of a present or former board member.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. Oh, there's,
Paragraph
oh,
three.
okay. Wow.
Yeah, former board member, president or former. That's what's in the
Yeah,
proposed
right on.
policy.
Well, president, police, of course.
It's out of their boilerplate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Actually, the flag will not be displayed on days when the weather is inclement. I think if the flag is deemed all weather, or I think you can fly a flag that's,
Well, your scouting affiliation should
I
help
think
us
so.
there first, yeah.
yeah, I think if the flag is weatherproofed or whatever. I don't know if some of this is correct or not.
Don't go take it down in a lightning storm, but it's,
Hold on tight.
yeah, okay. And similarly, this will be reviewed by policy again. And there is a policy when these policies have to come back for the second reading, right?
I move that we table the flag policy.
Second by Judy, all in favor?
To what it ends.
Is everyone?
We're not worried about legal on this, are we? I'm not.
Well, it has to be, it's coming back for second reading, and then we can vote on it.
do we want to find out what our district's practice is before we do a second reading?
It needs a little cleanup.
Made a note.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah,
clean it up.
I don't know if it's legal, but it needs to be.
Could maybe Paul look at this?
Yeah, but I think it's more an issue of what, if this is what you want to do. Don't you?
Well, I think we have to in some way.
Some sort
There's no power.
There is none. That's New York State policy.
We could delete a lot of this.
Yeah, it doesn't all have to be.
Well, yeah, why?
Of course.
The easy thing is don't even mention Pearl Harbor or
The death of former
board members or,
This is just former board members as of the beginning of the time that the district was formed, because the flag may never reach the top of the pole.
Exactly.
goes up.
And
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
the life expectancy of every board member is reduced by the time that you serve, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, I wish to be respectful, I just am concerned about us keeping track of the demise of some of our predecessors and so on, so.
Well, again, I think it's an option to do it that,
I
but
think
I
this
think
needs
we
to go back to
Yeah.
the
Whatever you
policy
decide is
committee.
fine.
Yeah, take
To
a,
clean it up.
yeah, exactly.
But table, that hasn't solved anything.
Well, let's go back to
No,
policy.
Except we voted for it.
Well, unlike the previous one, it sounds like there's significant board conversation about wanting to change some aspects of this, if not the policy itself, then some of the regulations. And
I think it'd be great if we get clarity on what exactly,
We have to do.
well, have to do and would like to do.
Yeah.
Back to the committee.
Back to committee, please. That'd be great. And on to partial hearing officer appointments and compensation chat.
I move,
Policy, go ahead.
I move to discuss policy 4321.8, impartial hearing officer appointment and compensation.
Okay. Oh, Chris second.
I'm surprised we didn't have something like this.
Well,
I
we
cer-
couldn't find anything.
We could have it and it could be misnumbered, is the problem.
There's several.
I'm thinking that there was maybe a resolution.
There might have been a resolution.
Oh, might we have been doing it as a resolution annually as opposed to a policy?
Yes.
And we have to have a policy.
Something makes me think that's what our practice has not been a policy like this. It's been an annual resolution.
I think so. It's been an annual something.
Well, your annual resolution was to appoint a person who appoints the impartial hearing officer. The impartial hearing officer is someone who gets paid to hear things and has certification. So what you've been resolving
Okay.
was not what this is. And this is handled internally by the district from a rotating list of people who are qualified to be impartial hearing officers.
Any other question, comments?
Who in the district handles these things?
Mike Lussell.
No.
Oh, special education.
I don't know, I don't have those anymore, I'm sorry.
We don't do many of these.
Our board clerk had the list the last I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of these do we do in a year?
It's very few. I've been going since 9 months.
We did one in August, but I know.
That's the
And my
superintendent.
only question.
Yeah.
And it's handled out of special ed?
Today's pay rate in here, or do you want to put some language, paid standard prevailing wages or something? You've got to give an exact.
Yeah.
We have an exact amount.
Yeah, my only question is, do you want to adopt a policy with today's opinion, or do you want to adopt a policy, you know?
I believe the $100, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's state mandated.
Or state mandated, it's neither more nor less.
Really?
No, it's written up by the state.
So when they change it, we then have to change our policy.
Yeah.
Why don't we just say as mandated by the state?
There you go, pay the mandated rate.
Yeah, then we don't have to change the policy the next time.
I'd like this to go back to the policy committee, maybe I ought to talk to,
Our lawyers.
lawyers and special ed folks who deal with this.
If it's mandated rate, just say such rate is mandated.
Needs a little cleanup again.
Then you don't have to review it again.
Can't we pass something tonight?
These are all first readings.
But the next one coming up is my personal favorite.
We're
I like
gonna,
it, I like this.
we're gonna table this one first.
Oh, yeah, I'll move the table 4321.
Second.
All in favor? Is everyone?
2 weeks.
On to the next and the last.
Okay. Move to discuss policy 4850, animals in the schools.
Second by Chris. This was interesting. We were out,
Nothing objectionable here.
we were out visiting schools with Dr. Brown the other day, and first day of school, and looking at great elementary classrooms. And gee, there's little animals in here. I said, are we allowed to do that?
That's not what this policy is.
Well, it is partially.
Well, not really.
So I was just
This is
wondering.
dissecting animals and how some children's religious values don't allow them to dissect animals. And
Is that what this is?
Yes, it is.
That's the second paragraph.
That's the second paragraph. We weren't actually very happy with the way that this was written because we were wondering if we wanted perhaps 2 different policies and
Yeah.
we weren't really happy with the title.
Right? That's
Well,
not
then do you
good.
want us to not, and you want to go break this into 4850 and 4850.1?
because we did have a policy about animals in the classroom for kids who are highly allergic.
But didn't we decide that it should be a building decision and that we shouldn't really have a board policy about whether animals
But you
should
said we
be in
had to
this?
be, so.
Well, we have to have a policy about this and about if there are live animals, they have to be ethically cared for. That's what this policy says.
Yeah.
That if people have a moral dissection or objection to dissection, we have to respect that, and that if live animals are put in the classroom, they should be respected. So it's actually pretty innocuous, and we weren't sure that we wanted to go any further with a more intrusive policy about live animals in individual classrooms that would really intrude upon teacher and school autonomy.
Could I make a comment?
Oh, please do, Connie. We're
Start.
So I don't mean to complicate the waters any, and I really specifically need the waters. But I am handling an inquiry from the community about some projects that we do at the 4th grade level that involve live specimens. I don't know if I would call them
Polywog.
animals.
Frog.
That are not indigenous to this area, and what happens to them afterwards. And so that is, it's sort of implied here in terms of the projects being well-planned. But we may consider talking about the appreciation of health and safety of both animals, students, and the environment.
It comes in a science kit.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It comes in a science kit, but it may not go back in a science kit, right? It may go into our, like you said,
They surely
you know what I mean? And it could be harmful to
Yeah.
our ecosystem, so to
Yeah.
speak. And so we might consider,
Crayfish, that's what
Crayfish.
yes, that's what it is.
Some crayfish are indigenous to the region, are they not?
Yeah, that's true, there are, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think you should consider the
Yeah.
policy so that it's
All
not
right.
left to the individual educator to make that decision.
This certainly is fascinating anyway, but anything to keep the district running, but...
Well, I would be happy to table this, bring it back to the policy committee for a second reading with that last sentence of the first paragraph amended to say animals, students, and the environment. But I would like to hear, I think, from the administration as to whether you think that's viable, workable, enforceable, if you think that's worthwhile to do. You think so?
I think it is.
So, I mean,
It would just require us defining a protocol for
All right.
disposing.
well, I like that addition. I would certainly accept it with that phrase. And I feel good about what we're doing.
I move
That's great, Pat.
that we require the administration to spend no more than 3 minutes discussing.
Come to you the 2-0.
All right. And I think we've moved the table, all in favor? That's everyone, okay.
Yes, your heart's just dark in policy.
Go ahead, Jay.
So in my packet, I've got some other policies. What's that about?
You do?
Equivalents in instructional staff and materials,
That
interpreters.
was an error that those were sent out. That's why she sent separate packets.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So this is not good. I'm good with
I
that.
remember those, Jay? So you're
You'll see
special?
those in the future.
Those are your
Maybe,
special
maybe,
days.
I'm okay if I
Yeah.
don't see them in the future.
Anything else on policies at this moment? We're going to have animals everywhere apparently, which is great. As long as they use the kitty pan, we're good. Okay.
We actually asked that this policy be on the first round that we considered because it sounded so interesting. And I think we were a little let down when we saw what the policy would actually look like.
No, but it,
And I'm not sure, okay, what you're thinking of interesting about probably isn't
I love the policy committee.
we love that you love the policy. So I think we're on to reprise. Sue, you got anything?
No, the starters, well, yes, first of all, hello, and I'm glad you all survived the flood. I was really pleased. This is the first year that the Ithaca Teachers Association office was not in water when everything came down, and I'm very pleased. So our computer was off the floor and the water didn't come in. In previous experiences, we left the tower on the floor and the water did come in. So I know now that in order to prevent any flooding, if I move my stuff off the floor, everything will be fine. So that's my commitment to you in the district. I visited quite a large number, quite a few schools, and opening is opening. It's always exciting and it's great, and it's wonderful to watch new communities and a real dedication. The morale still has a way to go, but this is the most optimistic I've seen people in a long time. There's a lot more communication going on, and there is some struggle in this attempt to establish the PLCs to find the way to make the time to have it happen. And so as Dr. Myers asks for board patience, I'm asking for board participation and understanding that we are working on a lot of these goals, but it is a work in progress. And we are working on the forms of assessment, and we need to do it in the first quartile, but it doesn't happen in the first week. This is going to take some time, and this is a process that we are growing in, and I hope that it'll improve our practices. I know that the sense of reflection has increased greatly, and we're having teachers talking to other teachers without waiting for administrators, who are wonderful people but can't be everywhere, to be active in moving forward. So I know that we are currently working on the APPR policy and committee. We have really good foundation for what you approved and passed, and there are some concerns about state ed. I will be going to state ed a week from Thursday, and I'm going to raise some of the issues that I think are key, which is how do we do this and what's the time frame, and how do we do this without increasing expenditure to make it happen? Because right now, there's just not enough body hours and time to do all the observations, to do all the evaluations, and to do all the assessments. We got to figure a way to make this part of the practice. So I hope we can do this together, and I thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
And I'm waiting for the paving of the mud parking lot, because I think that'll be great.
It's on the list.
I know, and I'm excited.
It's on the list. Anyone else? Mr. Lambert?
Let me reinforce Connie. I think I vaguely remember a recent state law about animals and their transportation into areas where they're not native, and I think there's elaborate procedures on that, and that ought to be looked into. On the comment about students not knowing school starts, I didn't hear any comment about the responsibility of parents. Not all failures are the failures of the district to communicate. People also have to take responsibility for themselves. And thirdly, I didn't hear anything about past efforts over the past 20 years, what we can learn from them in terms of community outreach in a wide variety of ways, town hall meetings and surveys and so on, that have been done, and quite a variety of things have been attempted, and it's worth looking at those and see what you can learn from them.
Thanks, Alan. Anyone else? Without further, other business by board members, superintendent, anyone have anything? We good? You can see the upcoming meeting dates for audits at finance and, I guess just support. We good?
I move we adjourn.
Well, Dr.
I
Brown?
was going to say, I believe that we had some technical difficulties, so the meeting tonight wasn't a live broadcast. But I think we'll be on later in the meeting. Okay?
Very good. Thanks. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.